Hi guys, I'm Layla. Welcome to Fiveable Cram Previews for AB English Language. Um, we are so excited to be with you guys tonight, and we will be giving at least a minute or two just to make sure that everyone is able to hear and that we're all getting in smoothly.
Hello, everyone. I'll go ahead and introduce myself later for the peeps who are late. My name is Melissa William. I am part of the AP Lang Cram host team for this year, along with Layla. And yeah, we'll just wait for a couple of you guys to jump on in.
Awesome. Okay. So it sounds like we're clear. You guys can all hear us, and we just kind of wanted to jump into it. I'm Layla. I will be your student host for tonight, along with my partner Melissa, and we are part of the AP English Language Fiveable team. So today we're going to be going over some of the preview stuff and also letting you know a little bit about cram mode.
Again, if you came in a bit late, my name is Melissa William. I am also part of the AP Cram host team, along with Layla. And yeah, it's not just the both of us. By the way, we also have another student host manning the chat named Arielise. So say hi to her. And Layla, do you want to get this party started?
Yes, we're walking through intros now. So next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. So today we just wanted to give you a few tips and tricks, and we're gonna want to recommend that you would take notes on things that you think are going to be important today, or things you want to make sure that you focus on. And along with that, keep notes of anything you're having trouble with or something you don't remember that we talk about. And we also wanted to mention the Cram Hub, as they're going to have all the slides, packets, and the replays of all these videos for you. So that's going to be really helpful. Along with this, the group chat, which is the main chat you guys are all on. You can talk, react, ask any questions. That's where you guys can interact with Arilise and our guy Kevin in the back. He'll respond if you guys need anything too. And another important setting you're going to have is the Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, put them there and we'll be able to vote them up. So if you guys have any pressing questions or we see that a question's getting a lot of attention, we'll be sure to throw that on the main stage so we can address it for all of you guys.
Yep. And I also wanted to add that all of the slides are going to be available for you guys to keep, per se. Student host Arielise is going to throw it down at the bottom of the screen, and it's right there. Oh, it's right there now. If you press the little green box that says find your slides and cheat sheets here, you're going to get redirected to the slides that we're sharing right now.
Awesome.
And before we go ahead in the to all the juicy AP language content, please remember that we are human. You guys are human. Be patient with yourselves. Be patient with us. Just try to be a decent human being overall, because we're all here to learn. We're all here to, get that 5, 4, or whatever high scores y'all want to get on that AP Lang test, right? So Layla's gonna start us off.
Awesome. Okay, so today's preview session is mainly going to be about the synthesis essay. Woo! So the synthesis essay is going to be a major part of your exam, as it's going to be within the essay category, one of the 3 that you will have to complete. And today we're just going to give you a brief overview about some tips and tricks for it. Next slide, please. Awesome. So what is the synthesis essay? It's going to be the biggest test of your evidence-based knowledge and your ability to use sources throughout the entire AP English exam. So you will be given 6 to 7 sources. 2 will be visual, one's going to be quantitative, and the rest will be text-based. And you're going to want to make a note that you will need at least 3 of these sources to write your essay. You're going to need to use evidence from those sources. 2 could be in support of your claim, and then 1 could be in a rebuttal, or you could go above and beyond and add 4, but you need a minimum of 3. So make sure to keep note of that. And it will be extremely beneficial for you to check all those sources out. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the skills required. One really important part about the fact that there are so many sources provided for this essay is the fact that you're going to want to make sure that you are reading with a purpose. And reading with a purpose means going through, highlighting, focusing on anything. It's going to be one of the most important parts of your utilization of the sources. If you are able to understand them and thoroughly read them, it's going to benefit you significantly. And then analyzing these sources as well is going to help you significantly to set up strong commentary, defend your argument, and make sure that you have like a thorough line of reasoning throughout. So you will want to make sure you take your annotation pens out, your highlighters, everything when you are reading with a purpose. So I'm going to just throw a quick poll up for you guys, and I want to ask you about the sources. So we're going to put the poll as visible. Boom. The poll should be visible. Let me know if you guys can see it. So I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to see that, and then we're going to make the results visible in a second.
Cue the Jeopardy waiting music.
Do, do, do. No, I won't do that. That'd be really annoying. I'm not seeing all the votes in there. Guys, keep voting. Vote away. Get in there. All right, I think we're getting close enough, so I'm going to make the results visible. And it is super, super torn right now. You guys are all over the place. So just a quick overview of all of them that we just wanted to mention is that visual, you're going to want to make sure that you're really looking at the image. If it's like a cartoon or something, you're going to want to interpret if they have a little caption and pay attention to all of those things. If it's a text-based one, again, annotating is super important, along with like the quantitative ones. But yeah, definitely focus on the text base as there's going to be the majority of those in there. So thank you guys for participating. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the synthesis and argumentation. So synthesizing your evidence into a coherent argument is extremely important to maintaining a fluid line of reasoning throughout. And this can totally be done by making sure your thesis is arguable and that you have a very established position from the beginning. And you're going to want to make sure all of the evidence that you're choosing is going to be supporting that, except for the evidence you use for the rebuttal, as you're going to want to make sure you use evidence that doesn't support in order to better argue your stance. And if you're able to argue your stance through the refutation as well as the body paragraphs you have, it's going to show that you truly understand your argument and you're fully knowledgeable about the position that you are arguing in favor of. Next slide, please. And we're going to throw up one more poll on there for you guys too. Melissa, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Layla. All right. So when you're writing essays, obviously it's not some easy thing that takes 5 minutes. So this 55 minutes that is typically given for the synthesis essay, that's merely a suggestion, really, because people are different. People write at different speeds. You may need less time you may need less than 55 minutes to finish your essay, or you need more. You may need more than 55 minutes for that. So really, that 55 minutes is all a suggestion, since you will be getting your synthesis essay and your other two essays at the same time. Again, the 55 minutes is just, the suggested time that you're supposed to be spending on that synthesis essay. And as you can see on the slides, while the 55 minutes is a suggestion, it would also act more of as a guideline, because obviously you're going to have to spend around 15 minutes, maybe 20, maybe 10, depending on how you divvy up your time. But you probably shouldn't be spending more than 10 minutes on your introduction or your conclusion, because really spending 10 minutes on one paragraph isn't going to make the most effective. You're not going to be using your time most effectively. So really, if you're just kind of stuck as to how much time you need, definitely shoot for the suggestion that they give you and strive for 55 minutes. All right. And obviously, you aren't just writing in the synthesis essay. You're also going to have to be annotating, reading 6 sources. And you're not just going to be reading it, by the way. You're also going to be hopefully annotating it. And obviously thinking of it and not just reading it. And it shouldn't be like this, okay? You shouldn't be reading it and then it shouldn't be coming out right away. You need to keep it in there and think about it as you go through your prompt and as you go through your other sources, right? So speaking of the prompt, before you start with your sources, right, you're going to have to spend maybe a minute or two reading your prompt. If you need to read it twice or 3 times to make sure you understand your prompt, go ahead, do it, because you would rather make sure you understand the prompt so that you could answer it properly, right? You don't want to misinterpret the prompt and you could end up writing like the best essay ever, but if you don't answer that prompt, sadly they're not going to give you the points for that, okay? Once you read the prompt, you're obviously going to have to think about where you stand. This, if you've gone over the argument essay, you know that there are parallels between the argument and the synthesis, right? With the synthesis, just having that addition of 6 sources, which is not like, that's a big difference. So when you're thinking of the prompt, when you're thinking of which position to stand for, make sure that you're choosing one that's going to be easy for you to argue for. You do not want to think hard and beyond, right? They're not asking you to write a PhD dissertation. This is a 55-minute synthesis essay. So definitely, before you even read your sources, just think of some positions that you can take, think of some stances they can take just by reading the prompt, and write it down if you need to, right? So that you have something to reference back on after you read your prompt, singular. So when it comes to audience in writing your synthesis essay, if you think of the audience, right, you're probably just going to be writing for college board graders sitting in a grading room, right? So you're going to have to be using tone and diction and language that's formal. Obviously, if you're one to be more stylistic, you could throw in some different quirky words here and there, quirky tone overall, but just keep it overall formal, right? Sometimes there may be some black sheeps per se. One time I had a prompt, I won't go over the details on it, but it specifically asked to write a letter to your school board. And obviously, if you're writing a letter to your school board, that may change up some of the words or phrases even that you may use. And while writing to a school board, you're still going to keep your language formal, but I think it just gives you more opportunities to add some pizzazz and personal color, right, to your writing. So after all of that information I've given you, it's your turn to take all of that and put into practice. So here I have a prompt that you are going to read, annotate. This is online, so you probably won't have a chance to get a highlighter and physically draw that color on there. But this is just for practice. Make sure you're looking at words or topics, key concepts that you would need to use to take a stance. So we'd give you around 2 minutes. Try your best, guys. Y'all are smart. Y'all got this.
Hey, Melissa. Really quickly, awesome job. I want you, do y'all have any questions? Like put them in the backstage chat if you do. This is a good pause. What I was going to say is make sure that you tell them where they can write this. It can be in the chat, it can be on hand, etc. Like when we get to the your turn to practice stuff, just kind of give them a little bit of framing for future your turn to practice ones of like how they can practice most efficiently. And if that doesn't make sense, you can't talk back to me because you're on screen, but you can message me. But you all are doing great, and we can actually probably go even slightly slower. We're like really doing good on pacing. All right, back to mute for me.
Layla, did you see that? That question that just popped up? Where'd it go? We want to, guys, if you have any questions, put it on the Q&A chat. So,
and we'll get to them throughout the slides where we think that they're relevant. So if anything's coming up, if we have time in the end too, we can go back over everything as well.
So again, if y'all have any questions, preferably put it in the Q&A chat instead of the main chat so that we could see it easily, right? We want to answer all of y'all's questions. So make sure that we could see it properly, not just in the sea of the main chat, right? All right, it's been around 2 minutes, guys. Finish up reading, finish that last word. And I'm gonna go over it a bit. So, some key terms, right? The first two words, urban rewilding. That's going to be, not to give you some spoilers, but really, even in just this prompt itself, you're going to see other words like restore, embraced, conservation. And when you add all of that up in that salad, right, of our prompt, you probably have an idea already of what the prompt is going to ask you. So, the last sentence especially is important for all prompts, not even just the synthesis. You're going to have to read that last sentence properly because that's when they finally ask you. That's when they're done with all the context. And that's when they finally ask you, hey, what do you think about this? In this context, in this prompt, they're asking you for your position on the extent to which rewilding initiatives are worthwhile, right? So you're definitely going to want to have to keep that in mind, underline that if you're taking the paper and pencil test versus, the online one. And yeah, hopefully you guys picked up on that as well, like urban rewilding being the main concept. And I'm going to throw it back to Layla right now. So get ready, y'all. Layla's like the GOAT, so.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful transition, Melissa. All right. So now we're hopping into reading and analyzing sources. Ooh, getting serious. So the credibility that we wanted to mention is make sure that you know your author, know where the source is coming from, because someone from a blog post versus someone from a government site is going to have a significantly different level of credibility with the words that they're saying and the evidence that you're using. So you want to be aware of that every time you read one of your sources, or whether it's visual or anything. Make sure to note that on your synthesis essay. And we also wanted to talk about relevance. So does it answer my prompt? Will it align with my stance? Don't fixate on making evidence fit your position. Focus on evidence that you see already supporting your position. You don't want to try and bend the evidence, because I promise you that the evidence will be out there that will support your position. So I would definitely focus on that for sure. And then along with this, bias is another really important part, as we talked about who is publishing this source, like who this is coming from. In another Cram slide you're going to see is something said by Trump about climate change is going to be different than Greta Thunberg. You want to make sure that you're understanding the bias that each writer and author has when they're writing a piece, as it's going to help you determine how to best target their bias, while also making sure that you are being as defensible as possible, but not taking the position too literally. And along with this, grouping is another important part to addressing your statistics, as you're going to want to take notes and write and annotate. As we said, I saw a highlighter question in the chat. No, you will not have a highlighter for the AP test, but one thing I like to do was underline important words and then box like important phrases. So you could do a distinction that way, as I believe it will help in determining the stats versus the sentences and claims that you want to focus on. And then you will also be able to use evidence that disproves or combats your position through the counter argument. The counter argument is going to be where you demonstrate your ability to argue your position thoroughly. So you will want to make sure that you are fixating on that. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to have another your turn to practice, and we're going to have a poll on the side that I'm going to make visible in a second. So make sure to check that out as well. So you'll be able to do the poll and look over and read and annotate the sources. All right, 2 minutes on the clock. We'll be right back.
Cue the Jeopardy waiting music once again.
All right, it's looking like we're approaching that 2-minute mark. This is your 15-second warning. Get in your poll answers and make sure that you have your annotations done. So 15 seconds, put in your answers for the polls. All right, so I'm gonna make the poll results visible. And one thing that's sticking out to me is that you guys seem to really fixate on the last two statistics that were jumping out to you more, and had a little bit of a harder time with the 70% of potential extinctions. So we kind of just wanted to give you a brief little way of how you could target something like that. And one example that we thought of was if you wanted to paraphrase a statistic, which might kind of help your point if you're trying to appeal to like ethos, pathos, logos, or if you're just trying to show your credibility by being able to reword it, you could say something along the lines of the extinction of roughly 70% of both animals and plants could be prevented by restoring 30% of priority areas. And then you could go on to make a claim about how 30% of priority areas is a smaller statistic, and that you would be able to defend your claim through ethos and logos as you're making a very strong argument there. All right. Thank you guys for participating in the poll. Awesome. So we're going to go on to the next slide, please. And what do you know? It's another practice. So you're not going to hear from me for a second, but make sure you read that, annotate it, and then we're going to talk about the things that stood out the most. All right. It's been about the 2-minute mark, so now we're going to talk about the practice. So one thing that kind of stood out to me when reading this source is in the second paragraph, how they broke it up into 3 different dimensions. 1, restoring and giving space to natural processes. 2, reconnecting wilder nature with the modern economy. And 3, responding to and shaping cosmopolitan perceptions of nature conservation among European society. Big words there. But if you wanted to, it would be a really beneficial idea if you decided to use that as evidence, that you could say 3 different dimensions, restoring natural processes and areas, connecting nature with suburbia, and 3, shaping civilization towards the conservation of nature. You could totally summarize evidence like that to kind of break down a solution that you would be proposing, or a solution or a benefit that would come with supporting rewilding. Or if you decided to refute the necessity for rewilding, you could talk about how those are too large of expectations to be placed on a seemingly smaller program. So those are 2 ways that you could kind of look at that evidence. All right. Next slide, please. Guys, this is crazy. I had no idea. It's another practice. Okay. This one, we're getting a little tight on time because there's less words. So 1.5 minutes on the clock for you guys, and I will catch you back when it's done.
Okay, real quick. So my total blunder that I put in the chat, I think you should address when you come back, Layla, which is how the strategy might change if it's digital versus paper pencil. Like a lot of people are thinking about that. So as they're annotating, just be like, hey, if you're doing paper pencil, you kind of mentioned like that's your strategy to highlight some stuff. But I think acknowledge kind of full group that half of the test takers are going digital. And this year, that's just a school based decision. So they're typing. And we haven't talked about it, but there's a highlighting tool. So our strategy doesn't change at all. Just acknowledge that full group because we're getting some questions with that.
Okay, and we're back. And firstly, I really wanted to address one of the questions that you guys are bringing up about how that's going to differ if you guys are online versus on paper test taking. So, one thing that I believe is really helpful if you don't want to annotate digitally or you're unable to based on like the College Board setup, you could be able to take really sophisticated notes and or like put a little star next to like a piece of evidence in quotes so then you can know exactly what you're talking about. And then if you wrote something paraphrased, make sure that you write its paraphrase so then you know how to fit it in and cite the source accordingly, and always label the sources on your piece of paper so you don't necessarily have to keep coming back to make sure that you're doing that. And if you're a lucky duck that gets to do it on paper and handwrite all those beautiful annotations, you can totally, as I've mentioned before, box certain sentences or underline certain words, and then you'll be able to see the sources a little bit easier because you'll have them right in front of you. All right, back to the practice. So one thing I kind of was drawn to when I first read this prompt was numbers 5 and 6, as they kind of propose specific solutions rather than a claim or a want. You know, if you look at 2 or 3, it's like the goals, developing new heritage and value, you know, those might not be your strongest pieces of evidence if you wanted to make the more compelling argument. But in number 5 and 6, where once restored, we step back and allow dynamic natural processes, you could also talk about how that's going to make the project low maintenance, or you could talk about how that's going to benefit conservation. And then number 6 is going to talk about the economic benefits. So then you could be talking and appealing to the individuals want to contribute better to society. And then again, if you were against rewilding, maybe take a look at those numbers 2 and 3 and say that, oh, you don't think that's as much important as blank, blank, and blank. You know, that's a very good way to formulate your rebuttal based on what evidence you have. All right. Next slide, please. Wow, we're just practice heavy today. So we're going to give you guys another quick minute and a half just to look over this little excerpt, and then we'll talk about it when we get back. All right, minute and a half has passed. We'll pretend. So this slide in particular has kind of just a little blurb on some of the evidence or the varying views about rewilding. And one thing that stood out to me is that they have really amazing vocabulary and diction throughout this article that I think could be really helpful to boost your sophistication. And you should all take notes of these things to kind of talk about potentially if you use for your essays or think words that may come up on the MCQs. It's like the consensus, sensationalists, their established and newer conservation worldviews. Like there's a lot of dense vocabulary within this article, and I think this is a really important part to note. And you can also kind of talk about how they focus on the media and what kind of impacts the media would have in benefiting rewilding or rewilding being less beneficial. So those are two of the things that kind of stood out to me for that one. And next slide, please. I think this might be the last one. I can't make any promises, but we're getting close there. So this is a data piece. It's like a visual, data. I would definitely focus on making sure you know how to interpret these graphs, and we'll go over it in a second. All right. Hope you guys appreciated your long, hard-earned minute for this one. So one thing that kind of stood out to me is the 50% less depression and 43% less stress. So when you're looking at statistics that are making big claims like that, it might be really helpful to implement them in your essay in some way, as 50% less depression is a very evokes a lot of emotional response to the reader and further questioning and interest in your topic overall. And I believe that making a claim of, yes, rewilding, like the neighborhoods with the greater amount of forest cover are able to find less depression and less stress on this side of the graph, while urban dwellers without this rewilding initiative have different types of struggles. And you can kind of talk about how that would benefit productivity, livelihood, potentially like school zones. It would help create a stronger area and community for youth. So there's a lot of places that you could take this. So I think this is a really important practice that you guys should make sure you're all great and aware of. All right, next slide, please. I was right. Look at that. Beautiful, not a practice. Now I get to just talk to you guys. So choosing your sources. As I've mentioned frequently, you need to choose sources that support your initial claim. It's going to help you significantly instead of bending that evidence, like I mentioned earlier, to support your claim. Just find your position and value it through and through, and then you'll be able to find evidence that supports it, I'm sure. And then if you're looking through all of the evidence and you're saying, hey, it doesn't seem like my position is really defended through any of these sources, you might want to think about changing your position or adapting it slightly, because you might be able to find more evidence for one thing and less evidence for another. And you definitely want to talk about that. And I think it'll be extremely beneficial if you understand what each source is talking about and the positions it's valuing. So then you can use it in your refutation, or you'd be able to use it in support. And then corroboration. You're going to want to make sure that you find all the sources that support your initial source that you find, that values your position and the like. And corroboration is be in conversation with one another. So anything that can really work well. So I'm looking at one of the questions in the chat. Do you recommend using a source in your counter? Absolutely. So in this rebuttal part, I'm going to talk a little more about that. You can use sources that go against your claim. I would recommend it. When I took the AP English language exam last year, I did absolutely. I usually introed it and then talked about it immediately after in that paragraph, and then went on to talk about why my position refuted it, or like acknowledge the good parts of their position, but say why yours is better, or anything of the like. I would definitely recommend using a detail or evidence or a claim that the other side is making, as it's going to allow you to greater show your understanding and your acknowledgement and the argument of your position itself. All right, I have one poll for you guys on this slide, so I'm going to open that up. You guys are going to get a quick, cool, crazy 30 seconds. So better answer quick. Boom, it's on now. Get in those polls. Type away. Okay, I'm going to close them in a few seconds. This is very important. I'm going to I'm going to be very impressed with you guys, or I'm going to be very upset. So there's two options. Get in there. All right, I'm making those reveal results. You guys are awesome. Unanimous votes for 3. Good job. Yes. Keep note of that. You need 3 sources. So you could use one for one body paragraph, one for another, and then talk about your refutation in another. And then when considering multiple sources for the synthesis essay, how do you determine which ideas are most relevant and complementary to your central argument? That is a wonderful question. So I would definitely say that once you define the spectrum of the position that you're going to be arguing, whether it's fully in support of rewilding or a little bit hesitant to rewilding, this is the spectrum. So you're going to want to pick at least one side. And of course, there's going to be variance, but you will want to pick one side that you're in support of or why you refute it. And that will benefit you guys significantly. So once you do that, when you're looking through the sources, there's going to be a clear indication of which side they are in favor of. That was what happened to me. I had a prompt that was about indoor farming, and it was talking about how indoor farming was occurring within this big warehouse and the benefits and the cons of it. So once you identify really what the topic is, you're going to see articles that are talking about solely the benefits, and then you're going to see ones that are talking about solely the cons. Sure, there's going to be some middle ground, but you will understand where on the spectrum each source is. Because a lot of the times, for me at least, they are very vocal about it. Like, it's always written from someone that's, I would say, very passionate about the topic, and they're like, oh, this is a terrible idea to implement this one. So you'll be like, okay, that is not in support of my claim, or yes, that is in support of my claim. I don't like this idea. So they do make it very easy for you to tell which articles are in support of which one. But I would definitely skim them all, and then you'll be able to probably see at least half and half are in support of one, or half and half can be in support of the other. All right. Thank you, guys. That was a great question. Okay, moving on. We're going to do the next slide. Thank you, Melissa. So, citing sources. This is another very important part to your argument, to the structure of all of your essays, is you're going to want to either put parentheses at the end of a sentence when you're using a quote or you're paraphrasing and say source A, source B, source C, or you're going to want to use, according to Dr. Howard, a paleontologist writing for the Smithsonian Journal, quote. So those are your 2 options. I have personally only used the source A in parentheses, as I usually put a few words in the beginning introing, like the claim that I'm going to be talking about, the quote talking about the claim, and then a few words on why I support the claim or what the claim is showing, and then the parentheses with the source. Because I think that's just a much more fluid way of kind of targeting how to cite your sources. Of course, you can use the second method. I just believe when you're a little crunched for time, throwing in those little parentheses is going to be really helpful just to remember to cite all of your sources. All right, next slide, please. All right, now we're going to be talking about the source integration overall. Woo, woo. Okay, so paraphrasing is a really powerful way to show you are understanding what they're saying, and then you're writing it in your own words, which can be helpful in some. Like, we talked about the statistics earlier. If you're paraphrasing it, it might make a little bit more of a stronger claim in one area than in another. And then summarizing. It is believed to be one of the strongest techniques of integration, as you're showing that you can put all of your knowledge of that one source into just a few words about the source, which can help to demonstrate the fact that you're knowledgeable, you are focusing your evidence where possible, and all of that. And then along with this, you have the option of quoting. So for quoting, you could totally talk about some specific claim the author is making, put that in quotes, and then talk about why you support the claim or why you don't support the claim. But yeah, as they've stated, don't make sure to limit the amount of quoting that you're doing, because you don't want the grader to be reading like 3 sentences of quoting, as it's just going to take away from space for your own argument. I personally always used quoting because I wanted to make sure all of my information was coming directly from the source, so that I was able to make sure I was referring to exactly the author's words and I wasn't misinterpreting everything. All right. Next slide, please. Citing sources. So these are just a few examples. Like first is the quoting one, where you're going to talk about source B, blah, 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 blah. And then paraphrasing, you're saying emphasizing the complexity of rewilding, which is your own words about source B. And then summarizing is cutting down source B to make it a little bit more concise and legible. So thank you guys for listening, for all the citing sources and all of the other questions I've answered. And I'm going to turn it back to Melissa now to talk a little bit more about some practices and everything else. All you.
I hear y'all in the chat. Y'all want more practice? Well, we're going to be going over your favorite thesis first, right? So right here, I have the rubric for the thesis. And really, every rubric you get, you're going to have to think of it as cheat sheets, because literally, College Board outlines what they want, what they're looking for, what gets you the point, and what doesn't. And also keep in mind that your thesis and all the other points for all 3 essays, it's gonna be a point or no point. So it's either you get the thesis point or not. There are no half points, so make sure you get that point, like seize it and grab it and get that point for yourself, okay? So there are a couple of ways to write your thesis and make sure you get the point. To have a clear position on it, to just directly go out on it, that'll get you the point. Like these examples would definitely get you the point, right? Because you're stating your stance very directly on whatever topic, right? So let's say the third one, we should eliminate daylight savings. That is a defendable claim that you can back up with evidence and reasoning. However, will it set up your essay for a very nuanced and complex, multifaceted argument? Probably not. So what I would recommend you to do is not just, your thesis, first of all, is going to be, I like to think of it as your first introduction, like your first impression to your graders, right? You're going to want to show them that you know what you're talking about. And if your thesis is mainly on your introduction paragraph, like that's one of the first sentences they're going to be reading. So you're going to want to show them that you can craft a nuanced and complex, multifaceted argument. To do that, you're going to want to put some complexity in it, right? Some nuance. So within that one sentence of your thesis, you're going to want to explore some other positions and not just one definitive, really just not just yes or no, but more of a although, like those words, right? If you look at these examples on the slides, you will see that the 3 of them, they start with the words although, despite, while. Those 3 words, they develop, they acknowledge other viewpoints. They essentially show some concessions in your argument, but they all follow up with their own point and their own stance and saying, hey, even if this happens or this is true, even if this happens or this is true, my argument is better because I'm better. Well, you shouldn't be arguing like that, but you get the point, right? I also have just put on a poll. So, oops, never mind.
Poll coming momentarily, guys.
Yeah.
We're keeping you on the edge of your seat. You got 2 more slides to go. 2 more slides.
I cliffhanger there a bit, but another type of thesis, again, despite, although, while, all of those concession words that you could put in your 1-sentence thesis. Now we'll give you the poll. I'll give you the poll. So take some time, 2 minutes, to read both of these thesis statements. They're not one sentences. Both of them aren't one sentence. They're more of like a mumbo jumbo of context and like thesis, all meshed together. But definitely just choose one, like which one would earn the point. Remember, it is point or no point. So either you get it or you don't. So I have the poll on, so go ahead and answer the poll while I answer this question. So the question is, should we have a full introduction paragraph, or can that introduction be just the thesis? I will actually answer that after the 2 minutes is over. So take some time and read. All right, y'all. Have y'all casted your vote? So most of you guys, about 2/3 of you, said that the right one gets the point, which is definitely what I thought too. So before we talk about the first one, or well, the one on the left, let's talk about the correct answer. So both of these thesis statements have a lot of context and fluff to it, right? You're gonna want to have to take off that rose-tinted glasses that have the context just riddled in the lenses. And I'm gonna go ahead and skip to this sentence right here. Ultimately, this is an idea worth pursuing. The author here, they talk about urban rewilding as an idea worth pursuing. And that in itself is a defendable position. And the next two sentences are merely just reasoning, and again, reasoning that you need for your thesis, which again makes it more defendable. While the left, however, it's really just more of it states a pro, which is it's becoming popular, and then it states a con per se, and say that there's health safety issues. And then its last sentence isn't really defendable. It doesn't really show the author's stance on it, and it merely just says, it's not even like reasoning, y'all. It just gives some more pros to urban rewilding, and that would not get the thesis because we want something defendable and arguable, right? We're here to argue. Pro arguers here must be very happy. And people who want to practice must also be happy. So for the people who are very, very eager to write their theses now, here's your chance. 2 minutes again. Go ahead, whip out your pens, paper, pencils if y'all don't have it already, maybe your laptops, and go ahead and type out your own thesis statement with all of the things that we've gone over, me and Layla, the prompt, the sources. Keep all of that in mind. Write your own very beautiful thesis statement. Good luck, y'all. Y'all are smart. Y'all got this. Time is up, y'all. If y'all need more time, definitely take some more time to do that. However, very sadly, it is time to part ways. I know y'all love us. So we're gonna be answering some questions, talking more about upcoming nights, because you're not done with us. Like, we're here to stay.
Okay,
So-
I just wanted to jump in real quick. I'm gonna throw this bad boy up on the screen. It's the "Are you allowed to paraphrase the blurb?" where it gives context of the prompt for our intro. If not, what can we write for our intro? So I would totally recommend that if you wanted to do an intro, do it intro sentence about the topic if you know anything about it, or intro something. One thing I've always done is defined words, which has been really helpful. Like if you're talking about literature, like I'm in AP Lit now, is like literature, blah, 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 or this specific example, blah, 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 this specific article, blah, blah, blah. Like you can always put a little intro sentence or two and kind of talk about the importance of whatever your topic is, and then write your thesis right under it. So that would be my recommendation. And then for the sophistication point for the essays, that we will be talking about that on the later nights. So you got to get Cram mode to find out. And the rhetorical devices as well will be gone over on night 2. Okay, back to you, Melissa.
All right. So I just want to add in, if you didn't see Arialis's chat, in the main chat, down below we have a survey. Definitely fill it out. I know y'all loved us, so add in a good word for us. So again, as I've said, we're not done yet. We are going to talk about our next schedules because we're still here to stay. So on Monday, May 6th, is our second 1-hour preview session. Our other student hosts are going to be taking over, so you're going to be seeing some fresh faces. I'm not going to spoil that much. But after that, we're going to have a lot of nights to review. Look at all that. 5 nights of 3-hour cram sessions, mind you, on different topics. Like, look at this. 3 hours for rhetorical analysis, 3 hours on just multiple choice questions. Like, that is crazy. Like, we are going to be having all this practice for all of you in 3 hours so that we could all get to know each other, personalize our questions so that, you know, we could answer more questions. Because I definitely know that a lot of people are asking like a bunch of good questions in the Q&A chat. But sadly, since we only have an hour with you guys, we cannot answer every single good question that's out there. So definitely think of joining our cram sessions, all 5 nights. However, you only have access to those cram nights with cram mode. It is a $5 subscription that will give you access to not only these nights, but also all the other AP subject cram nights. So if you're taking another AP class, which I'm pretty sure most of you guys are, you guys will have access to that too, so that you guys could study for that. You not only have access to the cram nights, but you have also access to study guides for all subjects, all AP subjects. That's definitely worth it, right? I'm gonna go over a bit of money details. The monthly subscription is $14, and I know that's a lot. However, the yearly subscription is $40. And P.S. there is financial aid for that. They will give you 50% off if you can't pay for that $40 in a year, cut down by 50%. So you're gonna be paying $20 for seeing us again for 5 nights of practice. And not only us, but a bunch of other resources for other AP classes that you're definitely going to be taking. So yeah, Layla, do you want to answer any other questions? Or
just wanted to say thank you. That was awesome, guys. We appreciate your participation, and we are hoping to hear back from you guys in the next nights and see some familiar names pop up in the chat again. So thank you all for being with us.
Woo, see y'all. We better see y'all.
We better see you, and you better all
Lock
get
in, guys. Lock in. AP exam is here soon. So
bye. Thank you.